Great. Thanks, Mel. Okay, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to our health and wellness category deep dive. For those of you who haven't joined us before, this is an exclusive event for our Pro and Premium members. And just to give you a bit of background on how we arrived at today, some of you might remember that at the end of last year, beginning of this year, we surveyed our in-market partners and our international trade specialists to try and understand the opportunities and challenges that they were seeing for UK food and drink exporters, to help you grip the global landscape in 2023 and beyond, and also to highlight the areas that they think that you should be focusing on this year and into 2024. And the outputs from those surveys went into our actionable insights reports, which many of you have seen, but if you haven't, it's not too late to request your copies. They're still available, and I think still very relevant. So the country research drew out a whole bunch of key trends around sustainability, value, convenience, and health and wellness, unsurprisingly. But we wanted to kind of scratch below the surface to help you understand how those trends are playing out in different categories, in different markets, because it's obviously not the same across the board. And that idea morphed into this series of category deep dives. And today is the turn of health and wellness, which is a bit unusual in that it's a trend and a category. And as you know, it's very broad, it's very diverse, encompassing everything from low carb to free from to nutraceuticals to organic. So to help us look at the trends and unpack them and understand what's hot and what's not, I'm delighted to welcome a group of very knowledgeable guests who are joining us today. So first of all, we're going to set the scene from hearing from two industry experts. Fiona Murray, who some of you may know, who's the Director of Food and Hospitality Events at Informa, and also Sian Edwards, who's the Group Insights Manager at Finley's Beverages. And Sian joined us a few weeks ago on our drinks category deep dive, and she did such a good job that we made her come back today. So that's great. And then we're going to bring in three probably familiar faces in the form of our in-market experts, who are your eyes, ears, and often hands and feet in overseas markets, and are there to support you on the ground. So Ross from Breeze Solutions, Steve from AWS, and Mark from Prof Consulting Group. And we're going to then be discussing how the different trends are playing out in the Nordics, the US, and Australia, respectively. If you've got any questions as we go along, put them in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll try to leave time at the end to come to them. I say try because the previous editions of these deep dives, we've had so much content that we struggled at the end to leave time for questions, but post them anyway. And if for some reason we don't get to them, we'll make sure that we do address them. We'll come back to you afterwards. So Fiona, welcome to the session, and I'm going to hand over to you to kick us off.
Hi everybody, thanks for having me, and I'm happy to hopefully contribute something to the discussion. Let me just get started. I hope you can all see my screen. So basically, Nicola, as you introduced, I'm the Director of Food and Hospitality Events for Informa Markets. So Informa Markets are the largest trade show organizer, and we have the largest program of food and hospitality events globally. Specifically, we run the New Hope events in the US, so Natural Products Expo East and Expo West, and probably a little bit more on my side and more expertise on our Asia portfolio of events, which is kind of headed by Food and Hotel Asia in Singapore. But we do have global events in the sector in Latin America, in the Middle East also. So hopefully my expertise, as we call it, will be giving a glimpse of what we're seeing on the trade show floors across the globe in these events. As I said, some are specifically natural products and health and wellness focused. Majority of our shows are just general food and beverage, but we definitely are seeing, as Nicola pointed out, a huge upsurge in the trend of health and wellness. I'll try to give you a bit of a state of play for the food marketplace, but I'm guessing that the other experts on the panel might be able to contribute a lot to this as well. But specifically in the food marketplace for health and wellness, it's estimated that the industry is worth about just over 100 billion US dollars globally in 2022. And I think the big factor is the growth predicted by 2030 up to over 200 billion. And I think that is a real question mark of where this sector can move. And I think that the growth trend that we're seeing at the moment is upwards of 9-10%. So I think leading the way in categories of growth in the food sector. USA is probably the most developed market. I think hopefully everyone would agree. It roughly accounts for about 30% in particular when we're talking about food. Europe and Asia come next. They're quite similar, around 20% each, and then rest of the world making up the latter part of that. I think what we're seeing in Asia specific in particular is the huge growth in health and wellness, particularly in the food marketplace. I think a lot of well-developed trends in USA and Europe are now catching on in Asia and really pushing ahead. And that market is estimated to have the fastest growth rate of all marketplaces. I think the distribution channels tend to be similar, dominated by the supermarket, larger retail outfits globally. In USA, I suppose, has the most developed specialist retailer. And while that saw a bit of a dip during the pandemic, it looks like that is very much back on track, particularly led by the larger health and wellness chains and natural product outlets. And then globally, again, e-commerce really will drive, I think, that growth, that nearly 10% growth in health and wellness. Moving on to what we're seeing on the show floor in terms of how that relates to customer trends, and particularly since the pandemic. I think the main feeling is that the health and wellness food category sector, it definitely suffered during the pandemic and through the rise in cost of living for consumers. But health and wellness definitely has remained as, I think, what Global Data have recently called a megatrend in the food sector, even outpacing the easy and affordability sector, the comfort and uncertainty sector. So it really has cemented itself through the pandemic as something that's on top of consumers' minds. They're prioritizing ingredients and foods that will benefit health. And I think they're, even during the cost of living crisis, they're still prioritizing that and being way more selective in how they choose their products. So I think gone from sort of superficial claims, consumers really want an overall better for you products. I think that's really leading the way in health and wellness in food, and really in terms of physical well-being, in terms of mental wellness, they're really strong trends. The traditional, if I call it that, drivers of health and wellness, sustainability, organic, natural, they're still very much the key to this sector in food. And I think they're really been boosted by new trends or desires for consumers. They want to see their food that contributes to the good of the planet, climate change, etc. They want to see regenerative agriculture, upcycled ingredients are definitely two buzzwords that consumers are using and asking about in store. And I think a real clear trend or consumer desire is that they want to see simple communication of the benefits of these products. So gone are the days of sort of over-promising. I think consumer trust is really based around getting packaging correct and really giving a simple, clear education on what the benefits of products are. So from speaking with a lot of buyers at a lot of trade shows, which I've been lucky enough to get back to over the last year, it's been really interesting getting to know what buyers are really looking for. And this is everything across the distribution channels. This is talking to larger retailers, specialty stores, to see what buyers are asking for in store. And again, I don't think it's a surprise that the ethical and sustainable sourcing value of products is still huge. Customers want their food products to relate to their own standards for social and environmental responsibility. Key to that, of course, is sustainability in production. Huge is sustainability in packaging. I think there's a lot more in the sector to be developed in terms of labeling and certifications. And while that is quite well developed in the US and Europe in particular, I think Asia is really looking to pick up on standardizing these values of foods. As I said, mentioned earlier, really how products are produced. So regenerative farming, a biodiversity focus on farming. Customers are really looking for that value in their products. Upcycled foods has become definitely something they're looking out for. The consumers really want to see that their food is produced with solutions to waste, to climate change, to food insecurity. Climate neutral foods, of course. I think we spoke a little bit earlier about all of us experiencing heat waves in parts of the world at the moment. So I think obviously that is going to be huge on consumers, I think, for a list of values for 2023. And in some ways, one of the trends, I haven't put it here, but that I'm hearing is looking for foodstuffs that helps deal with ever-changing climate. So foodstuffs that can help with hydration. There's new innovation in food and supplements and nutrients that can assist in even SPF qualities in food. So there's quite a lot of interesting innovations in that space. As I said, the packaging footprint is huge in terms of what buyers and retailers want to see on their shelves. I think there's a lot of even large retailers really switching up how they present products. I think any of us who go into the local supermarket will now see products with new packaging, with different outlook on packaging. So that is huge in terms of consumers' needs. Energy saving products in the health and wellness space has become huge as well. And I think that links into convenience. We're seeing a lot more desire for products that consume less energy, and that very much relates to the cost of living crisis. So products that add water rather than bake in an oven for half hour. Products that are easily adaptable to the microwave or air fryer. So that links in with convenience, but it's very much around energy saving costs as well. Buyers are very much looking for shelf stable products. And I think that links into problems and issues over since pandemic with supply chains, also linking into energy costs. So on to trends and specific trends that we're seeing across the show floor. I was at Natural Products Expo West earlier in the year in March in Anaheim, and very soon afterwards I was at Food and Hotel in Singapore. And I think what was very interesting was a very similar type of product trend was really evident in the health and wellness space, and it's all revolved around brain health. And I think there's been huge innovation in terms of the health and wellness food space in this particular trend. And it's really one of the ones that buyers are predicting that will last. So this is a trend here to stay. I think health and wellness is probably full of trends that have come and gone, but buyers are very confident in this one. And this is really to do with the innovation and the products available to consumers now. The range of products that are aligned with improving moods and concentration, memory, everything from workspace to relaxation to off work time. Definitely, I think one of the buzzwords that we're hearing a lot are nootropics and adaptogens. And I think in the past or in recent years, that's been very heavily, the innovation's been very heavily focused on supplements. But I think now innovation is definitely moving towards a lot of activity in functional foods. So drinks, chocolate bars, energy bars, and there's some examples here of the category. But I think one thing buyers are saying about this trend is that the jury is still out in terms of consumers' perception of the tangible benefits. And I think it's really important for producers to be very wary of price-conscious consumers, really focused on products that they will pay more for, but they want to see that it's proven clinically. And they want to ensure that it's natural nutrition that they're consuming. So, I think also, which was very evident, again, from the show floor and from speaking with buyers, organic is still one of the most important trends in health and wellness, particularly in the food category. And I think it's a real driver for the growth globally. So, you know, with the already well-developed markets in US and in Europe, Asia's really now picking up on the organic trends. And I think one of the issues in Asia, Asia Pacific, has been the lack of a coherent certification. But nation blocks such as the ASEAN nations, that's really to the core now of their minds of setting standards across the ASEAN nations for organic, and that is also true for the likes of sustainability, etc. I think when it comes to certain products under the organic heading, traditional products are really performing well. So meat, seafood, and poultry, they haven't gone away, but I think there's a key desire from consumers to see those products being produced responsibly. So under the organic label, and again, we see the terms regenerative farming, upcycled ingredients. Dairy has, organic dairy has seen a real growth in the US in particular. And so that is in terms of natural dairy and dairy alternatives on both sides. Snacks have become, has returned to the forefront and very much under the organic label. And again, it's very much related to ingredients that consumers are highly valuing. So clean ingredients, high protein snacks, healthy snacks, natural snacks. So we hear a lot, has plant-based run its course in health and wellness sector, and what we're seeing is that actually plant-based is really holding its own on the show floor. I think there's a lot of new innovation in plant-based products. So it's not the traditional that a lot of people think of, where it's relating to vegan consumers only. There's a range of customers now who are looking for plant-based products or more plants in their diets and more diverse plants in their diets. Out of the alternative dairy and meat, actually seafood, I think for 2023 is really one of the products really in demand. We could see that again in Asia in particular. I think it was one of the top products at FHA this year in Singapore under the alternative protein plant-based section of the show, and definitely one of the top wish lists of buyers at the show for sure. Dairy alternatives is huge again across the globe, again, particularly in Asia and in China. I think animal-free dairy is a new innovation in this sector, revolving around innovation in fermentation of ingredients. So I think that's definitely one to look out for, and certainly natural products this year in Anaheim. That was quite a buzzword. Meat alternatives definitely are still top of the list, but alternative meat products. And I think in Asia in particular, that's sort of becoming much more of a buzzword, and particularly in the hospitality space rather than the retail space. So, you know, it's very difficult to go into a restaurant in US, New York, the West Coast of the US, London, many places in Europe without having an alternative meat product or a plant-based product on the menu. In Asia, we're starting to see that now. We're starting to see both high-end hospitality outlets and convenience food outlets, fast food outlets, really starting to add plant-based and meat alternatives to their menus. I think baby foods is definitely a new sector. I won't say new, but more developing sector. And I think as parents are changing their diets, they're also looking for alternatives for their children's diets as well. Egg substitutes, huge globally. So again, that was a big trend, particularly in Asia, but certainly in the US at the trade shows that we've seen this year. Healthy fats is, again, a huge area for the food, health and wellness food sector. So I think this really relates to gone is the era maybe of fat-free, and has it been replaced with consumers' desire to have a fully well-balanced, nourished diet that contains lots of healthy full fats. I think consumers are much more looking for, rather than fat-free, they're looking for to ditch empty calorie foods. And to replace that with products that not only in the health space, but are flavorful, nourishing. And I think innovation is really catching up to with a whole host of ingredients, and food manufacturers are really looking at that space, how full fat products can be healthy and flavorful and natural all at the same time. There's a big drive in diet trends. Again, keto seems to have resurfaced, and again, that's pushing the drive toward these new innovations for healthy fat ingredients. And naturally full fat dairy products and dairy alternatives are really sort of seeing a huge trend on the show floor. So in particular in Asia, but further afield now, you see ghee is very popular to cook with, to as an ingredient in foodstuffs. Coconut and other plant fats have become a huge demand on retailer shelves. I've picked maybe those trends from what we're seeing on the show floor, but I think I would give some honorable mentions to, again, I suppose, leading into the desire for consumers and cost-conscious consumers to have more of an all-round, well-balanced diet. So the brain foods really feed into that. Also nutrition, health, gut health, immunity. They're really key topics that I think that consumers are particularly looking for. And I think particularly in Asia is what we see is the biggest change from pre-pandemic to post-pandemic on the show floor. Health and wellness has really gained traction. And certainly I think the innovations that are happening in the food space are really pushing that drive. South Korea, Japan, China, those key markets are really driving this desire for healthier food products. But I think other nations, Singapore, Thailand, are really at the forefront in terms of organic, plant-based proteins, alternative proteins. So that's really my quick dive into new trends that we're seeing. I know there's a lot out there, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing from the rest of the panelists what we can expect for the future. But thanks very much for listening. And if there's time at the end, happy to answer any questions.
Oh, that's great, Fiona. Thank you so much. That's really, well, given us lots to think about, and great to set the scene. Just on the brain health alone, I couldn't pronounce half of the ingredients that you said are trendy, let alone
I avoided them like the plague, Nicola.
Yeah, I've got homework to do myself. But no, it's so interesting. And I just had a question on the shows, that obviously for smaller brands or first-time exhibitors, I understand that it's very hard for anyone to stand out at a show anyway, let alone from a distance if you're an overseas exhibitor. But I think I'm right in saying that, for example, at Expo East and West, you've got a number of kind of mechanisms around the show to help first-time brands, the harvest and the one-to-one meetings. Can you just give us a couple of minutes on those opportunities? Because I think that's quite important for new brands going to the shows.
Yeah, very happy to, Nicola. I think for us, in terms of international customers coming into the US space in health and wellness, what we really try to do is give the international exporters a platform at both shows. One of the changes that we are really focusing on at the moment is actually to elevate Expo East in September. That happens in Philadelphia this year, but often moves around the East Coast, is to really give that show a more of a new brands and new to market focus. So really making it much more of a platform where importers, distributors in the US, particularly from the East Coast, is to do a lot more matching and smart matching with buyers and new to market products. There are various innovations at this show. So as you mentioned, that the Harvest Festival really gives new brands an opportunity. US trade shows are very expensive. I think a lot of companies will recognize that. And what we really want to do in this space for smaller companies is offer more opportunity and more value to test the market. So for the Harvest Festival, buyers can use one day of their time at the show together with new to market companies. So it's a one-day event basically that happens inside the show. It makes it really cost effective for new to market companies, but it also allows buyers the time to spend a lot more of their minutes at a trade show, which is pretty valuable together. And it's all about sampling. It's all about getting your product out there, educating the importers, distributors, buyers in terms of what your product can do, learning a lot from importers and distributors of how your product can be on a shelf space, and learning a lot from speaking with the importers, distributors. We do run a program also, which is linked to the standards section for natural products. So the show itself is very strict on what products can be exhibited, but we have a full team that are there not just to go through the products that will be exhibited on the show floor, but actually to offer advice to new to market companies, very much go through the labeling requirements with prospective importers and distributors, and that's part and parcel of what we do when these new to market companies are joining the show. So there's a whole team in New Hope that will help advise on labeling. Things like where an ingredient is called one thing in the US, in Europe, we might label that as something different. So there's a whole host of real informative information there from the team. And of course, once a product is in the natural product space, buyers for natural products in the US know that your product is suitable for their shelf space. So I think that's a really, really important benefit. We also have started a marketplace for natural products called Beacon, where again, suppliers and specialty stores, retailers, they know any product listed on that website is suitable to go under their health and wellness space in supermarket stores. So I hope all those innovations will show that there is a cost-effective way to get your product into the US market.
Yeah, I think that's really useful to point that out, because I think, as you say, it is very costly to go to the States. And if you're a small brand, it can be just kind of off your radar. But yeah, as you've outlined, there are cost-effective ways to get into the market. So really worth having a look at those shows. And I'm sure if you wanted to discuss it in more detail with Fiona,
Absolutely.
I'm sure she'll be very happy to have a chat with you. So thanks, Fiona. That's brilliant. Sian, welcome back. And yeah, over to you to hear about the trends in the drinks category.
Thanks, Nicola. I'll just share my screen. Has that come up okay?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, great. And yeah, just to echo Fiona's kind of thoughts. Thanks for having me again. It's great to be back. And I know kind of not everyone is from the beverage industry here, but hopefully there are some kind of nuggets of trend info or something for everyone as kind of I'm going through. So is it going to move very quickly about me and kind of why I'm here. So I've spent 7 years leading the global insights function for Finley's, working across tea, coffee, and botanical hot and soft beverages. So that's everything from kind of iced tea through to energy drinks, hot tea, hot coffee, iced coffee, nutritional functional waters, anything like that kind of within the beverage space. But we do also supply kind of snack bars, ice creams, all of those kind of things as well. So working across the snack and kind of food a little bit as well. And I look across consumer trends, industry dynamics, product innovation, and strategy development. So a lot of that is looking around kind of the major trends that are driving our markets. And I support Finley's global business and our customers as well. So this includes things like the Global Trends Report, which I've got a link for in the slides if you'd like to kind of check that out. The 1750 magazine, which I'll share with Nicola when it's out in September this year, and various kind of pieces of bespoke and proprietary research. So this is something I spend all of my time kind of looking at, is the trends and what's driving our markets. And then a little bit about Finley's. So we've got a long history in tea and coffee, supplying it to the global beverage industry. So our heritage in kind of hot tea, hot coffee, but a leading supplier of tea, coffee, and botanical extract. So I was really pleased that Fiona picked out L-theanine as one of the kind of key ingredients in that kind of the brain health trend, as that's kind of something that we also supply in those kind of functional ingredient space. And then global footprint, you can see we're kind of everywhere really. And in the UK, we have cold brew coffee extraction, tea and infusions blending and packing, coffee roasting, blending, packing, and NPD labs as well. So there's a little bit about Finley's and kind of where we sit in the world. And I'll move very quickly onto the trends. So as Fiona said, health and wellbeing is a really important kind of one of our key mega trends. So that means that we consider it to be long-term, global, and highly influential when it comes to consumer buying and purchasing choices. So we know it's important for consumers. So 64% of consumers, and this is kind of global consumers, always or often choose a product based on how it impacts their health and well-being. So it's a really important purchase driver. This in turn is driving innovation. So 57% of hot and soft beverages launched globally in 2022 carried a health claim. So it's really important in the categories that we're operating in. This is important for tea. So 58% of global consumers believe green tea has a positive impact on their health. And to echo some of Fiona's thoughts around, the regulatory environment being difficult to prove claims, all of that kind of thing, that kind of health halo and the belief and consumer perception is really important when we're trying to communicate that health messaging to consumers. And then coffee is equally as important here for the health trend. So 55% of global consumers associate coffee and caffeine with being energy boosting. So again, it's providing that kind of tangible benefit and it's relevant to this overall health and well-being trend. So we consider the health trend kind of manifesting in a number of different ways, depending on the consumer need and motivation. So we've got the kind of healthy alternatives. So a product that's the kind of slightly better for you than you might have chosen. So the one we've picked out here, the example is the Lipton No Sugar. So it's a healthier alternative potential, depending on your diet choices, to the Lipton with sugar. And then we've got kind of holistic well-being as a sub-trend within it, is the products that kind of don't make any specific claims, but provide a kind of overall halo or a sense of well-being on a kind of holistic level. So we've got kind of wellness tea here. And then finally, we've got the kind of very specific functional claims. And these can either be kind of hard claims on packaging, very difficult to kind of prove or have approved in certain markets, or they can be perceived. So for example, the kind of high levels of vitamin C, the consumer perception there is that that is good for their immunity. So there's a kind of claimed and perceived element there, kind of working with the regulations in each market. And then we're looking at, so here in this chart, we're looking at the kind of claim category. So what types of claims are we seeing in the beverage industry? So within that kind of holistic, healthy alternatives, functional, how are they kind of, how impactful each of those trends? So natural, so this is so there were last year, there were 18,978 kind of healthy beverages launched globally. And this is captured from Mintel. 52% of those had a natural claim. So this ranges from all natural, organic, all the way through to kind of no additives, no preservatives, no artificial colors, all of those kind of things. We're seeing that is the top kind of leading claim category. The second most important is minus claims. So this is where we're seeing kind of no, low and reduced sugar, calorie, fat, all of those kind of things as consumers look to kind of restrict or kind of reduce those from their diets. Then we have here a functional. So a third of the healthy beverage launches carried a kind of active functional claim, whether that's energizing or antioxidant, kind of things like that, that kind of, that's all drinks with benefits. They're providing something extra for a consumer. Then we've got plus. So this is added fiber or something like that, that kind of, there's not a clear functional link necessarily made, but they're telling you that they're upping your kind of intake of a certain ingredient. And then we've got the free from. So free from caffeine, free from dairy, all of those kind of things, which account for around 9% of the overall healthy launches. So you can see here, just as Fiona said, how important those kind of natural, organic, kind of additive-free claims are. But really, what a high percentage we're seeing across the board of all the different types of claims. Then we had a look within that kind of framework of the specific most important claims. So we've got the top 10 claims by kind of number of product launches. And this again is from Mintel. So you can see here, the top one is absolutely no additives and preservatives. So on kind of nearly a third, so 28% of products had that claim. And that just demonstrates really how important that kind of natural positioning is. The second most important is the vitamin and mineral fortified. So your added vitamin C or your added kind of B12, whatever it is that you're kind of fortifying your beverage with, or, food or beverage. And then we've got organic, as Fiona said, really important trend and kind of growing in many markets. And then functional energy, so that kind of consumers sort of returning to normal, going back to busy lifestyles, that need for energy is certainly not going away. And we're seeing kind of continued fast growth of energizing products in the energy category. Then we're kind of moving on to some minus. So low, no reduced calories, sugar-free, no added sugar. And this is really about the healthy alternatives. So people making a switch to a reduced calorie or reduced sugar product. And then we've got a kind of more of the artificial colors, artificial flavorings, and all natural at the bottom. So that kind of gives you an idea of the type of things, type of claims that we're seeing kind of play out in the beverage industry. And I've kind of gone into our healthy alternatives, our holistic well-being, and the functional products, just to pull out kind of what does it look like in the market, and then where are we seeing it, and what are the sub-trends. So healthy alternatives, key markets, really we're seeing this everywhere. So it's well-established and mature beverage markets like Western Europe and North America, but we're seeing it growing in the less mature markets and developing consumer countries like LATAM and Southeast Asia. So particularly countries like Mexico, where there's been a real kind of, real consumer preference for the quite sweet carbonated soft beverages, all of those kind of categories. We're seeing them really switch over to those kind of reduced sugar, those kind of diet or light items. So that real kind of shift is happening in many of those markets. So this is where we're seeing the highest growth in the kind of healthy alternatives. Within this trend, there are a couple of kind of key dynamics or sub-trends. So obviously there's the kind of diet, light, skinny options. So we've got here the Starbucks skinny latte, no added sugar, lactose free. So that's a really kind of very obvious example kind of this trend. And within that, the kind of move on a bit too quickly. Within that, the no, low, reduced sugar and calorie. We're also seeing here as a kind of healthy alternative, the clean energy drinks. So we've got here the Virtue Clean Energy. So this really is your kind of healthy alternative to a more traditional energy drink like Rockstar, Red Bull, that kind of thing. We're seeing really fast growth of the kind of clean energy. So this is, you know, it contains added vitamins, it's got caffeine from natural sources like tea and coffee. It's kind of providing the boost, but in a way that consumers kind of don't feel is detrimental to their wider health. So it's kind of bringing that holistic sense into a very kind of category that's kind of traditionally been seen as kind of quite high sugar, full of kind of synthetic flavors, all of those kind of things. It's kind of reforming what that category looks like. And we've got, yeah, the Virtue one here. And the other trend that kind of comes into this sort of healthy alternatives is the alcohol alternatives. And this ranges all the way from kind of the non-alcoholic spirits to the hard seltzers that have kind of a low ABV and are kind of sugar-free and contain natural flavorings, or, you know, have a kind of tea or coffee base, something like that. So that's kind of, there are so many things going on within this trend, even relating to the health and well-being space. And I think, you know, we can see this across the food and beverage landscape. It's certainly not unique to beverages. Then within the holistic well-being, so this is typically more present in the more mature beverage markets. So consumers are highly engaged with well-being and have that kind of holistic view on their health and can make those choices around kind of everything they're consuming having an impact on their health. So this perhaps doesn't relate quite as specifically to specific claims on pack, but more a sense of well-being when kind of consuming a product. And as Fiona pointed out, you know, this is where we often see that intersectionality between health and sustainability, with consumers kind of buying products that kind of overall make them feel good. So from a sustainable perspective, they're making a good choice. And from an overall health and well-being perspective, they're making a good choice. So the key dynamics and sub-trends that kind of we pull out for the beverage industry here is that gut health, the kombucha, fermentation, probiotics, prebiotics. All of these things are really kind of fast growing claims in the kind of beverage space. There's the demand for organic, as we've kind of picked out already, that kind of well-being that comes with feeling like you haven't ingested any chemicals or any toxins. You know, we're actually seeing toxin-free is quite a fast-growing claim as well. So it's that kind of overall well-being. And then the kind of ingredient, and I use fads very lightly here, but the ingredient kind of fad trends. So, you know, we saw it a couple of years ago with matcha, suddenly really fast growth as people kind of switching onto it, learning about it. And, you know, that's actually something that's sustained. So these things that kind of come out with really fast growth doesn't necessarily mean they're going to burn out, but it's something that we're continually monitoring, is kind of when ingredients suddenly kind of enter the consumer consciousness, and we see kind of really high demand for it very, very quickly. And that's really accelerated by the amount to which people are sharing things on kind of TikTok or Instagram when they're kind of trying out these new products. So that kind of fad to trend transition that we see with ingredients here as well. So when consumers feel that an ingredient kind of benefits their overall kind of well-being. So we've picked out here a turmeric ashwagandha herbal tea. So this is by Vadam in India. And again, that's kind of, there's a sense that it's kind of good for your health. It can contain some kind of buzzwords and kind of key ingredients, but there's not any kind of really specific claims about what it would promote. And then there's the Health Aid Kombucha bubbly probiotic tea for a happy gut. So it's kind of got that gut kind of sense in there, but it doesn't tell you exactly kind of how that would benefit you, what the actual kind of health output is. So it's that kind of holistic well-being of the sense of a happy gut, meaning the rest of your body is functioning well. So it's really kind of really heavily leaning on that consumer kind of perception and belief. And then finally, we're at the kind of the functionality. So this tends to be in mature markets. So a caveat here, we see lots of this in developing markets in a very unregulated way, where kind of claims can be made and kind of perhaps aren't kind of policed or regulated in the same way as in mature markets. So where we tend to focus on this is the mature markets, where there's kind of clear guidance from regulating bodies, and the consumers are kind of highly engaged as well. So where we tend to look for this is those mature markets where consumers are highly engaged with the kind of ingredient benefits. So there's the kind of belief, and, you know, consumers have kind of done their research or know their stuff, or, you know, really kind of are very interested and engaged in this category, and they want tangible benefits from the products they consume. So as Fiona said, with those kind of cost conscious consumers, they're looking for the reason to purchase, the reason to kind of part with their money. But as I said, this creates those regulatory challenges. So it's a kind of watch out there that it's very difficult to put hard claims on pack, and there needs to be kind of real knowledge of all of the different regulatory environments in different markets. So the key dynamic and sub-trends that we see in here is that kind of claims versus consumer perception. So what can you put on pack versus what do consumers believe has a good kind of positive impact on their health and provides that health halo. So kind of working between those kind of dynamics and being kind of cautious in the regulatory environment. Then we've got kind of vitamin mineral fortification. So this kind of, you can see here, enriched with guarana and taurine. So putting things on pack that consumers have a positive association with, enriched with vitamin C, enriched with B12, all of those kind of things. That's kind of a really key dynamic within this trend. Energy claims. This is kind of, as you can see here, this kind of vitamin energy tree helps reduce tiredness and fatigue. So a kind of key consumer need there is the kind of energizing, and then antioxidants, for example, within green tea, but the kind of L-theanine as well. So all of those are kind of help driving that sense of functionality for consumers, and kind of helping them sort of pick the kind of drinks with benefits that they believe are going to provide something tangible. So that's it. That was a kind of quite a quick view through the world of healthy and functional beverages. We have, as I said, the Finley's Global Trends Report that covers off kind of a number of our key trends. It was from January, but I think still relevant to the end of the year, and then we'll do another one. And obviously LinkedIn, email me if you have any questions, and obviously kind of Nicola can also kind of pass any questions on as well. So yeah. That's
Thanks,
all
Sian.
from me. Thanks, Nicola.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. I hope you didn't have to drink those 18,900 etc. drinks to come to all these conclusions. But
not at all.
I just wanted to ask you a quick question. In fact, Phil, who is from Number One Living, was on the call, and I think he's had to dive off. But he's Number One Living are a relatively new kombucha brand, obviously trying to go global. You produce all these fantastic insights, but for somebody like him, have you got a sort of top tip in terms of taking those insights and turning them into a practical sort of a practical action that he can use that to his advantage when he's talking to buyers or researching markets, or just kind of, how's he going to stand out amongst all of those products that you've taken a look at?
Yeah, it's really difficult because it is a very, very crowded marketplace, and we're seeing increasingly that consumers, particularly younger consumers, really kind of want it all. So they're not very willing to compromise on kind of convenience and accessibility of products, the health benefits, the sustainability credentials, the brand, all of those things. It's quite, you need to kind of have an answer for all of them. So I would say in kind of communicating your brand, being really clear about your purpose and your messaging, but then also kind of having a clear view of where you stand on all the other key trends. So really interrogating your own brand and being really clear about the proposition, but also really clear about how you address all of the different consumer needs. Because I think it's not kind of good at, in this very crowded competitive market space, it's not kind of good enough anymore to just do one thing and say, okay, but our sourcing and sustainability doesn't matter, because everything is intersecting. So I think it really is kind of that, how demonstrating how you kind of perform against all the different consumer needs, which it's a major challenge.
Yeah, but yeah, that's a great takeaway, that kind of holistic look, because I think it's you know, you're so busy concentrating on everything else that it's just good to have that to hang your hat on. So I'll definitely pass on your tip to Phil.
But if he does
you.
want any more help, I'm very willing to catch up with him at any point.
Great, thank you very, very much. Now, plan A, as I said, was to talk to our in-market experts. So we had some questions kind of related to what Fiona and Sian have been saying. But I am, as usual, we've had some great content, and we've got great content to come. So I'm going to flip it slightly and go to plan B, and I'm going to ask each of our in-market experts just to kind of talk to us about how what Fiona and Sian have been talking about in terms of trends are playing out in their markets. Anything that they do they agree with at all? Are they anything they violently disagree with? If that's okay with Ross, Stephen and Mark. Mark, I'll come to you first, because if you didn't hear at the beginning of the call, Mark's just landed in Melbourne at 5 a.m. This morning, so he's doing really well to stay awake, so we've got to keep him awake by asking him a question. So we'll talk to you first, Mark.
Okay, you got me? Is that okay? Yeah, excellent. Nicola, firstly, both presentations were fantastic, really insightful, and reflecting lots of what we're seeing in the market. So really glad that I was around to listen to that. So congratulations to both the presenters. I think if we bubble it down just very quickly and say, what does that mean in the Australian market? I would say digital wellness is probably the piece that we haven't talked about on the call that is driving consumer trends. So, you know, for those of us that are into the running or the iWatches and are constantly watching how our body is performing based on food we're eating, that's becoming very popular within a certain significant sector of Australian consumers. And I think that will continue to be exciting, but I think that will continue to create opportunities for the brands at the cutting edge that are really bringing in science or science-related claims into food and making it available mainstream. So I think that's one piece there that I would add. But I think actually when we look at the Australian consumer, what do we understand at the moment? High protein foods continue to be very popular. The Chobani case study of where they launched Greek yogurt into the market probably 6 or 7 years ago now. The target group they were aiming for is very different than the target group that are buying the products. It's actually the male tradies, dare I say, that wanted something to complement their gym lifestyle. So, but it just shows that high protein really continues to come across into food and beverage and resonates very well, as does the free from category. Gluten-free is obviously the main one here. But, you know, there's a number of other free categories such as wheat and dairy that are not necessarily getting the traction in the market. And I think that will come. But probably the most exciting area in the food space here at the moment is the growing narrative around food as a medicine, which I think builds on what the two presenters have talked about so far, as in we understand nutrition of food, we understand how we can make food healthier to suit our needs and our needs, but actually how do we use food now to really influence a greater well-being? And I think some great work coming out of the US, and I think that will start to come into Australia within the next 12 to 18 months. Single biggest thing I'd just finish with is I think we have great products, and how do we bring them to market quickly? Both the retailers here have re-looked at or reset their health aisle, and a number of products that would traditionally be in that, you know, second or third aisle of the supermarket that not everybody shops have been relocated into the store next to the less healthy options. Because if you want to buy cereal or you want to buy a snack bar, you're looking to make that decision when you're in that aisle, not go and compare what's in the health aisle versus what's in the confectionery aisle. So I think that gives a great opportunity for food and beverage businesses, because you're up against your natural competitors. And it's really clear then to say, for all the marketing claims we can do, which are the ones that will resonate the most with our consumers and which ones do we lead with on the pack, so that we don't become too crowded. But I think I've taken plenty of my time there, Nicola, but really enjoyed it so far. Thank you.
Sorry, that was me on mute. No, thank you. That was really interesting. I think as you just your final point there about that kind of shift in store where these products are being located is so important if you're a brand trying to get into the market. So thank you. Change of hemisphere. Ross, how about you? What are you seeing in health and wellness up in the Nordics?
Much the same as we've heard from those great presentations, but there was some differences. One is that there's a bit of a grey area between what is health and well-being and what is sports nutrition, that you tend to get some overlap between the shelves, and some of the sports nutrition companies, particularly Barbells, got into some serious trouble recently with mislabeling packaging with healthy and natural and things like that, when actually there's nothing natural in there. So there's this ongoing thing about what is healthy and what is actually natural and so on. We also, I mean, people here might not know this, but the highest consumption of dairy products in Europe is actually in the Nordics. But we have to think of the flip side of that, because actually Finland, 20% of the population is lactose intolerant, and Sweden is about 17%. So we have the highest lactose intolerance in Europe as well, because a lot of the genetics that come from Asia, particularly in Finland, from the medieval times, whatever. So there is a really big drive in this region for lactose-free products, which in itself has been driving some other issues, that we've been having all sorts of dairy-free products appearing on shelf, particularly snacks, we could say, which actually say, for example, sour cream and onion potato chips, dairy-free. But they're not actually any cream in them, so they can't be called sour cream, but they are calling them that. And there's a big argument, and there's actually lots of bloggers going on about it, which is complaining to the food ministry here about it should be sour cream flavored potato chips, not sour cream. And this is right across the board now in many categories, about that if you're having dairy free and you say that you can't have cream, it's flavored, and about other flavors within the health and well-being, if you're going to take out the bad stuff, then you have to say you've taken that out. You can't say it's that flavor. You have to say it's the real thing, it's flavors. And there's been a big thing about that. The other thing which you haven't mentioned today, which is quite big up here, is climate neutral. Climate neutral is a good thing in the health and well-being area, and the retailers like it at the moment, and it's a real catch thing. You see so many new packaging coming with it. I think the other one is that because the Nordic countries have monopolistic retailers and they will follow each other and everything else, is that the health and well-being category is still relatively small. So a lot of it is online. There's a plethora of both big and small online retailers that are specializing in health and well-being, with a lot of brands from all over Europe. The biggest problem for those brands is that, of course, to get traction, you need volume, and often a lot of the online selling is very niche, and you don't get traction. So there's always a challenge getting into the mainstream retailers. Holland & Barrett up here came in and then left. They failed miserably, but there is a local competitor to Holland & Barrett called Life, which is pan-Nordic, which is actually a really good retailer, and they still have many stores. So there are ways in from alternatives from the mainstream retailer. But so there's lots going on. The population is fairly acceptance, particularly I would say the female population. So more so than the male. And I would say that probably Denmark and Sweden are more receptive than probably Finland. Finland tends to be still on the sports nutrition and the lactose-free specialities rather than some of the other stuff. And Norway, you never know what Norway's going. It's a small market and they have very small selections on shelf. So it's a tough market to break into, the Norwegian one.
Thanks, Ross. I was just going to say, which is why, just talking about Norway and the Nordics, why companies should come on our Nordic mission later in this year to discover more and understand all about the vagaries of the market. And I think what you said there about the whole kind of naming of products and ingredients and claims is creating, well, a lot of work for the foreseeable future for labeling, packaging, compliance experts, which is probably another workshop in itself. Just from what you were saying, what's happening in the Nordics. I
think the false claims, or the real claims and the false claims, is muddying the actual health and well-being area, and free from, I would say, as well, the area as well.
Sure. Great, thank you. And last but not least, coming to you, Steve, have kind of final reflections on what's happening in the US.
Yeah, I can say all of the above. I think the presentations and the comments from Mark and Ross all fit into the US. Of course, we do it bigger and better in the United States. That's always the way it is. But I think really the growth rates we've seen for functional foods, plant-based, organic, they've all gone down in the last couple of years, but there's still significant growth rates. I saw plant-based over the last 3 years grew 44%. The 3 years rolling before that, it was 55%. So we've gone down from 55% over 3 years to 44%. So still significant growth in plant-based. Same with functional foods, it's 6-7%. I remember 5-10 years ago, it was more like 10%. So a lot of growth. The real challenge in the US, it's just extremely competitive. And that's when we work with our clients, as we talked about the messaging, you really have to come up with a story that's going to grab the attention of your partner, importer, distributor, and the consumer, and figure out how you're going to kind of push your way into the market. We like to come up with a kind of a preliminary marketing plan as well, which is going to grab the attention of partners, importers, distributors. So a lot of opportunity. It's a very open market, a lot of growth, but that doesn't mean it's easy. You really got to push to get in. There's a lot of competition going on. So that's my quick take on the US side.
That's great, Stephen. Lots of good practical advice there, which all these insights have got to translate into something that you can action. So that's really valuable. Thank you. Yeah.
Just one thing. I don't know if everyone's aware, but the Ellen MacArthur Foundation is doing a whole series of food podcasts on the circular economy for food, about healthy food and everything, which I will put in the message here, the link. But it's probably of interest to everyone here, I would think.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks very much. And that brings me very neatly on to say that we've just run over, and as usual, these hours are just so stuffed full of amazing content that we always run over. But I know you've got other things to do, so we'll leave it there. But we will send out, as we have done for the other deep dive sessions, a resource pack with, if Fiona and Sian are happy, the slides and the some other good stuff from Steve and Ross and Mark, and different kind of links that we've found, and we'll include the podcast there, Ross, in that pack that we send out to everybody. So it just remains me to thank Fiona, to thank Sian, Ross, Mark, and Steve, and thank you for coming along. And we look forward to seeing you at our next event, which just a couple of plugs. One is for our Pro and Premium focus group this Thursday, when we're going to be sharing the results of our distributor survey with you. And we've got our usual member meetup on Friday, which you're obviously all very welcome to join. And thanks very much, and we'll see you next time.